Welcome to the Wise and Happy Life podcast, where ancient wisdom meets modern science, and mindfulness, philosophy, and happiness practices blend with neuroscience, compassion, and common sense. Hosted by Bob Martin, meditation mentor, happiness coach, trial lawyer, and entrepreneur. This podcast explores how to live with grace, presence, and purpose in a complex world.
Well, hello, good people, and I'm happy that you're here with another episode of a Wise and Happy podcast. I always like to start the podcast off with a little saying or something that kind of gives an introduction to our guest. And what comes to my mind is if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. And it makes me think of Columbus. The world thought the world was flat. And then all of a sudden, the entire paradigm changed and it was round. Makes me think of Newton, who had definitive laws of how physics works. Then along came Einstein and said, whoa, we got to rethink all that. And then came quantum physics and said, we have to even rethink that. And so I want you all to meet Dale Kershner. Dale is, I'm going to say, a disruptor. He's been in the counseling business and coaching business for 43 years and has brought people not only from 0 or minus 10 to 0, but he really works at bringing people from 0 to minus to plus 10. He wants to move folks from being ordinary to extraordinary, from living lives that are livable to lives that are flourishing. And I think that he's got a lot to share with us today. So without anything further, Dale, I want to say hello to the folks.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me on today, Bob. It's an honor to be here and always a welcome opportunity to interact, even though it's, with people who are just listening, interact with them and see if there's anything that I can do with their brains that causes them to look at something a new way.
Well, Dale, one of the things that I like to speak about, is this idea of questioning things. And that it is true. If you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. And unless we go into our thinking and into our database and disrupt it, and you are a bit of a disruptor, I understand.
I would say that may be the core element of everything I do. Yes, I like to play with what people think are commonly held truths and understandings and just jump in the middle of them.
And, one of the things about folks, in this whole world of self-improvement and self-development and psychology and self-analysis is it seems like, everyone's always talking about how these aspects of our thinking are unhelpful and that they hold us back, they imprison us and the like. But I mean, let's be real. Not all of us is bad, right?
No, for sure. As a matter of fact, I eliminate the concepts of good and bad, right and wrong, right out of the gate with my clients. Those aren't useful concepts. They're too
So what do you use instead?
Workable and not workable.
Workable. Sometimes I use helpful and unhelpful.
Absolutely, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So
as long as you're taking the moralistic piece out of it, because that's just too transient.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit more about that. How do you work with your clients, and what do you look at to begin with? And how do you discover what areas can become more workable?
In conversation, obviously, everything shows up. The pieces of language that individuals use are windows to what's going on inside. Empty rejoinders and things like that give us a sense of a lack of confidence that exists somewhere. And then we talk about, what's important to them, which typically they discover the thing they came for is never the thing they end up wanting and receiving.
I get you.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of conversation about, oh, you want a bigger house, or oh, you want a great relationship, or oh, you want a fast car, just to get more clear on what is the underlying passion, what is the thing that you're really out to accomplish. And it takes a while, but typically we get to the bottom of what truly motivates them, and in most cases something that makes them happy. So mostly we work toward their happiness, their joy, their their peace.
Yeah, happiness. Wow, that's something we could take a whole podcast in defining
We could
what
indeed.
is happiness. But
Right.
what do you generally find is what they're really looking for?
I think that everyone comes into this life uh, wanting to impact something. Sometimes it's a thing, sometimes it's a community, sometimes it's just another individual. Um, Certainly, when we were in our late teens and 20s, we sought to conquer the world in some way. Um, that gets beat out of us pretty quickly. But I think that kernel remains, and will always be humans seeking to impact, and mostly other humans.
So, purpose, meaning, are those words that fall into place with the idea of having an impact?
They do, but maybe in a kind of a unique way with me.
Okay.
Um, uh, People come looking for purpose, looking for meaning. One of the most common questions I always got was, "What is the meaning of life?"
Hmm.
And so it's very easy for me to come at them and say, "Well, I'll give you the answer right here, right now." And the answer is, there is no meaning to life, none. You come here, you do things, but you invent your meaning for your life. You create it, and there's more powerful and less powerful ways to create it, but that's where it comes from. And you want to create a meaning that people can't mess with.
Hmm.
Uh, so we
Um,
do.
and I bet you get some resistance to that because I think that people often tie the idea of meaning. If you put it into a religious context, you might say, "What is God's purpose for me?" Or "What is God's will for me to achieve in my life?" And they kind of conflate that with the idea of my meaning. But
Right.
you're saying that that may not be helpful.
I I just speak a different language when I'm speaking with religious folks.
Hmm.
Uh, Oftentimes everybody's headed toward the same direction. They just call it different things. And like you say, God's purpose could simply be the thing that I create that is my purpose. And I can call it God's purpose. I don't care, Muhammad's, Buddha's, whatever. So I think that really comes down to semantics. And
Hmm.
if there is a core passion for something, then whether it's God inspired or not God inspired, it's where you live.
So, do you think it would be fair to say that a person that uses that kind of language, uses God's purpose for me, would it be fair to view that as God's purpose for me is for me to discover that which gives me joy, that which gives me impact, that which provides me with my sense of meaning and purpose?
Well, indeed, if we're created in God's image, and God is this benevolent overseeing power, then how would we represent that any better than finding our own most powerful direction in life? So yeah, I think it's perfectly consistent.
Yeah, it's an interesting paradigm. I've never thought of it that way before by saying if God has created us in its image and
Right.
God was a creator,
Okay.
then we must be creators.
We must. It's in
Wow.
the it's in the definition.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I like that.
Yeah,
So
I
how do we discover it? How do we get there?
I think there are clues in things we have done, and things we're doing and things we want to do. If we look back, we created a set of strong suits, when we were 3 to 6 years old, or at the very beginning, and those are usually hints to character makeup indications. People who become super intelligent are overcoming a fear of not being smart. People who are ultra confident are overcoming a fear of not being enough. All those kinds of
Hmm.
correlations. So what I look for is, okay, great. You started out creating this. There's some passion. There's some deep seated core belief system or need that underlies that whole structure. And so let's start there. If your need is to be seen, great. Then there must be something in your direction that is visible, and will put you in front of other people. If it isn't, it's the opposite of being seen, but to make a difference, great. Then there's a quiet, subtle way for you to make the difference that you're out to make. And so we
You know,
start.
I'm thinking of people that are power oriented or wealth oriented and the like, and they feel they have these great needs for power and wealth and the like.
Right,
And if I hear you right, you're saying that those kinds of needs and purposes arise out of almost the opposite,
almost right.
almost
Yeah, a
roughly
more
equivalent to the
yes,
opposite. But
yeah.
if if our needs and wants grow out of our feeling of lack, how do we begin to create? And by the way, those kinds of needs may not be helpful in our language here.
They may not.
So, how do we begin to create those purposes, needs, and wants that are stemming from something that's more authentic and actually are helpful?
I think the first thing I do is, the first thing I do is I change their language. So,
Okay.
right, the terms and uses of language that they're using that keep them small, or
Hmm.
keep them from the direction that they're capable of. First, we start there.
Well,
Uh,
let's stay there for a minute
okay,
because I think what you just said is very, very important.
sure,
We use language kind of offhandedly, kind of using whatever word just comes up for us that seems to fit the bill at the moment.
right,
But there there needs to be a little bit more intention with that. When I teach meditation, a lot of people say, "Oh, my mind drifted. I couldn't keep my focus. I couldn't stay concentrating." And those are such judgmental terms that I try to wean them off those and say, well, let's talk about the fact that maybe my mind wandered, which is a different perspective and
yes,
makes it more of a natural thing than something that's fault oriented.
sure.
So so you're saying the same thing, that the language is very important. I wonder if you could give me some examples just so that folks can understand, how important, the choice of words is.
I'll give you a couple of
Yeah.
the most dramatic, I guess,
Uh-huh,
examples.
uh-huh.
So one is the use of kinda. We hear it all, or like, I guess, is kind of the parallel to it. We were drenched with that during the whole Valley Girl kind of concept, where it's like this, it's like that, it's like this, and that is a diminisher of language. So if
Mhm.
you're lacking in confidence, then it's like the thing, it's not the actual thing. Kinda is the same thing. It's kinda important that I do this, or I'll kinda get started on that, is just a diminisher that takes away your responsibility to actually complete or do the thing. So those first things that I work at is taking those out. There's several. So right, all of those tend toward that same direction. So we
Uh-huh.
eliminate those from vocabulary.
I get you.
The other big one is try. Well, no, I'll try to get that done by 3. Well, okay, but my question is, will you get it done by 3, or will you not get it done by 3? And so I spend a lot of time with try, and except for in rugby, when try describes some kind of scoring maneuver that they do, there's no real value to try in the vocabulary at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I really seek to eliminate that as well. And that is probably the biggest paradigm change I see with human beings when they truly stop using that term and take responsibility for themselves.
Yeah. I remember the old TV show Kung Fu.
Yeah.
With the young student and the master who was blind.
Yes.
He would put a pea in his hand,
Yeah.
and he would reach out and say, "Try to take the pea from my hand."
Yeah.
And the student would reach it and take it. He says, "No, you took it. What I
Right.
told you to do is try to take it."
Exactly.
And the student didn't know what to do because, as you say, try has no meaning.
It doesn't.
And there's a change emotionally in taking that word out. Yes?
Very big.
Talk to that.
Well, people generally who use that term and extensively use that term but don't have an experience because they're masking it, but internally have an experience of a lack of confidence. They're not certain that what they're going to do is going to work. So they qualify it. And when you take the qualifier out and you force them to give themselves one or the other outcome, then it bolsters their confidence. The energy coming off of them becomes more powerful, more impactful. The way they deliver a message to another individual is incredibly more confident. When you go up there, no, I don't want you to try to fix the machine. I want you to either fix the machine or not. Tell me which it is, and then I'll find somebody else who can fix the machine. So I think it totally undermines their hiding from their own power.
Mm, mm. And I remember once when I was a mob lawyer, one of my mob clients defined integrity for me,
Oh, that's
which
interesting.
seems very counterintuitive,
It
right?
does.
But what he said was, do what you say you're going to do, or say you didn't do it.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's kind of like what you're saying. If you want to stay in integrity,
Yeah.
either say you're going to do it, and if you didn't do it, say you didn't do it, and be done with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the one caveat I would add to that is say you're not going to do it as soon as you know you're not going to do it.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
As he would say, I always want to get bad news first.
Right. Get it taken care of. Yeah, that's actually with a linguistic change. That's my definition for integrity, which is a huge part, I think.
Okay, so that's the first thing, is work with language.
Yep. Yep. The second thing is we dive into not so much them, like from a therapeutic standpoint, but then from an actions standpoint. What are the things that they do? Because, of course, the things that people say are rarely reliable. So what have they done? What are they doing? And what do they want to do? Great. You want to be a super powerful person and have all the money on the planet. Okay, great. But why? Why do you want those things? Mostly the people who are uncurable narcissists, which are rarely people I work with. They don't want to hear what I have to say, but they're covering up this dramatic and massive lack of self-confidence, and they're hoping that the more money and the more power that they have, the less anyone will notice how small they're showing up. So I dive into those kinds of things, those kind of characteristics, and we work with, okay, what's the, back to this kind of purpose thing, but what's the energy you want to put out into the world? When you walk into a room, what do you want people to declare? And then we usually build around that. What is it you want to accomplish? What actions are consistent with this future that you see yourself standing in? And one of the exercises I do usually with clients at the very beginning is we create their scenario, a script for their life 5 years out. So they just define a day for me and they write it all down in almost script narrative and supply that to me. We play with it to make sure, not necessarily that there's anything to change substantively, but that, what they've done isn't too small, isn't too eager for what they're capable of. And then we plan from that place backwards and create the actions it would take to become that thing.
Yeah. I talked talked a little bit to this idea of their plan may be too meager for what their potential may be. Talk to that a little bit. Because
Well, let's see.
my sense is that we all walk around within the confines of some cage.
Sure.
And our sense of freedom really depends on how large that cage is around us. And some folks, some of the folks that I deal with and that you deal with, I'm sure, that cage is very, very small. Um, yeah, can you
One of
speak to
the-
that?
yeah. One of the concepts I have is that, yes, I certainly, when I start with anybody, there's a cage. For some of them, it's grandiose and large. For others of them, it's incredibly confining, and they're living this tiny life. Um, so one of the things I first do is eliminate the cage.
Hmm.
There's not a size of the cage that's adequate. Um, if there's a cage, there's a limit. So I work with no limits. I think that's much more comfortable, and they
Ooh,
will accomplish what they'll accomplish, but there's no upper end.
I can understand the idea of expanding the cage out, but to say no limits, wow, it's that's scary a little bit for me.
It's scary for everyone. I mean,
Uh-huh.
we're not afraid of our limitations. We're afraid of our power. So yeah, I think it frightens everybody a little bit to consider the fact that what we have here is unlimited.
Ooh, okay. Right. No, I get it. It's just like you say, it's a little bit scary. There's something that has a sense of security about like knowing what my boundaries are and knowing
Sure,
what my room is. And like, I
absolutely.
guess maybe when we were kids and we get in trouble, we go to our room. At least we were in our own room around our own comfortable stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sitting on our
So,
bed comfortably.
you say we're still doing that.
Of course. It's
Oof.
so human nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, I have edges here, that my meat sack has edges and boundaries. And, I'm in a room, and within that room, I'm in my city, which is in my state, and so we have concepts of all these boundaries. Everything seems to have a boundary. We don't. We were talking about energy earlier. Um, Energy has no bounds. When we look at quantum or scientific
Mm-hmm.
analysis of energy, it is only limited by the measuring devices we have to test it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are energy, which I propose that we are predominantly energy, then what's the limit of that? How many light years from here can our energy impact if we have sensitive enough instruments to test it?
So let me tie that into the idea of question everything. There are a lot of doctrinal philosophies
Sure.
that are, as I said, very doctrinal. They're very, this is believed this way. This is how it is. This is the truth. If you don't do this, this will happen. If you do that, this will happen.
Right.
And uh, in many ways, some of those, especially when you get into religion, the more doctrinal it is and the more definite and certain it is, uh, the more popular it seems to be. Does that lead us to a feeling that most folks are willing to sacrifice freedom for certainty?
Absolutely, but I would rephrase it. I would say that
Okay.
most people are willing to sacrifice freedom for the perception of certainty,
Ah, yes,
right? Because that's
because
no
it's
more
not
certain
really certain.
than that. It's not, right?
And and on some level, I think those same folks know that it's not certain. And
Right.
so there is a cognitive dissonance going on there. I'm pretending that I'm living a life with certainty, but yet I know that it's not certain
Right.
on some level.
Sure. I mean, if you intellectualize it even for a minute, you go, well, wait a second, we're all going to die. Okay. Well, it could happen with the bus. It could happen with, an atomic explosion. Okay. So that's not very certain. The only certainty in that thing is the end of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to be fairly certain. But even there, who knows? Is there a life after death? Is
Death,
there
right?
a continuation, a transition, whatever? So yeah, certainty is almost like try. I think it's an illusion. I don't think it actually exists.
Mm-hmm.
Even, you were talking about earlier, scientific thought. Okay, physics says this, and then Einstein comes along. And
Right.
now physics says this. And remember, they were the laws of
The
physics.
laws of physics, right?
Right.
Uh-huh.
So all we know is even the laws of physics are transitional.
Hmm.
So where is certainty? I pointed out for me.
Oh, so losing that certainty can be a very transformational experience, I imagine.
No question about it. I
And
think when
and
you
you work
learn
with that. You work with that.
every day.
Wow.
So like someone comes to me and they lost their job. So all of a sudden everything's uncertain. And I said, well, you're right. It's uncertain. Now, one perspective is that I don't have that job anymore. So this box of certainty is no longer there. But another perspective is that anything's now possible. And in a world of uncertainty, that means you can do anything. And that's kind of exciting, if maybe even very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
If I wake up the next morning and go, oh, that's right, I can do anything today. I can seek anything. I can cause anything. I can be anything today. I don't have to be at a desk typing on my computer doing what they told me to do when I used to work at that place. So,
And yet these voices are going off in our head saying, no, you can't. No, you're not. No, you're,
right.
and how do
Yeah.
you deal with the voices?
Well, the voices are rarely your friend,
Rarely.
and they're not you. You think that the voice in your head is some subconscious concept of yourself, and you've invented the voices and you're saying what the voices say. It's not true. The voices are owned by society, the they that tells us, oh, they say that you must this. Those are the people who own those voices in your head. So mostly get out of your head and stop listening to the voices and start creating your own realities, because that's where true power lives. And that's
Mm.
where your direction, your joy lives.
So you're saying that we're living a life that was given to us by the culture and society around us, and that we're able to create our own life.
It's worse than that.
Okay.
We're living a life that we pulled society into, and we created how and who we are. We created those voices by listening to those around us and listening to what society says, and then internalizing it, turning it into our own truths. From the time we were 3 years old and conscious, we started creating and seeking evidence in the world to substantiate the conclusions that we drew when we were 3 years old. And
So
we're
you're asking
doing it.
us to take responsibility for internalizing the stuff that was dumped on us.
But look what happens when you do. If
Huh?
you made
Okay.
it up, if you made it up the first time, you can make it up again.
You can make it up again,
And you can make it up to anything you want it to be.
which goes back to the idea that life has no meaning and you can create the meaning that you want in life.
As a matter of fact, you
Yeah.
do, and
Hmm.
you can. Yeah,
Yeah. And you work with this all the time. You see these transformations happen, right?
constantly, constantly.
Wow. How great is that to be with somebody when you see that happening?
There are several moments along the path where there's those epiphany points, and and hearing on the other end, and it never sounds like something. It's empty space.
Uh-huh.
Because we'll be talking along, they'll bring me, their latest trial tribulation from the day, and we'll dissect it, and I'll show them, a new way to perceive it or create it. And then there's this dead spot,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no noise. And so, are you taking notes? He said, no, I just have to think about what you just said. And those are my lifeblood. Those are what I exist for.
Mm-hmm.
Those remind me why every time somebody is struggling for months with a concept and making me crazy that I can't figure out a way to say it, that they get it. Those are the ones that keep me at this at 70 years old.
Uh-huh. So let me throw two little statements out to you and
Okay.
ask you to speak to them. One is that happiness has a work ethic, and two, that a lot of people quit just before the miracle happens.
Mm. Okay.
Can you
So
speak to those?
I can. Happiness, work ethic. I mean, I wrote the book on happiness. So
Yeah, right.
yeah. So there is effort involved with happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you engage in a lot of gossip, happiness is elusive. If you engage in a lot of judgment, happiness is elusive. There's a whole bunch of things that work that way. If you allow the world or society to dictate what makes you happy, then it's going to be elusive. So it takes a concerted and conscious effort daily to either reprogram, remap your brain so that your responses are responses that make you happy and empowered, or they're responses that let you, go with the flow and end up with what you get.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's work, there's diligence, there's intellectualizing, and there's repetitive um, actions that
Mm-hmm.
cause.
Repetitive actions. I think that's
Absolutely.
it's an important point. You have to do things
Right.
again and again and again. It's like Bruce Lee said, the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks does not scare me. The
Right.
man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times, him I fear.
Right. Yeah. And it's neuroplasticity. It's how we made our brains the way they are now. So it's how we have to remake our brains if we want them to be a different thing. And then you have to remind me about what the second thing was.
Second thing was that so many people seem to stop, or I don't want to use the term give up, but it really is to give up just before the miracle happens.
Right.
It's like they persevere and persevere. I don't know if this is true or not, but it seems to me that whenever I get lost, if I say no, I'm never going to find it. If after that moment I just go one more block, I'll find it.
Yeah.
It always seems that way. Now, I'm just saying, I say that kind of jokingly, but
Right.
in my practice, in your practice, I've run into a lot of folks that, they stick with it for a while and you could see the changes about to happen. And then poof.
Yeah.
What do you think that's all about?
Um, for one, I think that most people fear succeeding.
Uh,
Once again, it leaves them in that power state that we're not very comfortable with as human beings. So I think that that's part of it. I also think that there's a piece of us that knows that the next corner is where we need to go to get there, and so we'll avoid it. Others of us just get tired of the effort or get tired of the repeated actions before the result of the repeated actions happens.
mhm,
In neurolinguistics, we talk about how that repetition causes new behavior, causes new actions, causes new reactions. So people come to me and I say, okay, I've got a little tool that they use, where they touch their wrist and then breathe and then create the new response. And I say, okay, now go out and do that. I said, do it 100 times a day this week. And so at the end of the week, they come back to their call and say, okay, I did it. I said, and how'd that go? I said, oh, well, I still feel this way about it. I said, I got it. Okay, Now here's the second stage of your assignment. Now do it 10,000 times. And they just, I can't do that. And I said, you can. You just did it, 700 times in the last 7 days. So yeah, you can. And that's how you'll get what you came for. So go do that.
Hmm. There seems life gives us things that are uncomfortable. The Buddhists call that dukkha, suffering.
Right.
And it ranges in everything from your friend being late to an appointment to losing a child. I mean, there's
Sure.
all of that. There is not much that we can do about that, but we can become stronger and increase our tolerance for discomfort. And is the path to becoming more tolerant of the discomfort that life offers us that which requires us to take responsibility linguistically and otherwise?
Yes, kind of.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't think it's learning to tolerate those things that challenge us.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's reclassifying those things that challenge us. Stuff happens. I'm not gonna say that stuff doesn't happen.
Right.
The guy switches lanes in front of you and he's a foot away from your car. You're walking by on the sidewalk and a chunk of a building falls off and hits the sidewalk in front of you. Things happen, but the negative aspects of them we make up. So chunk falls off building. Oh my God, I almost died. Or I'm so lucky. I'm going to go buy a lottery ticket. Whatever it is, we make up the bad stuff. We don't have to. When we know that we're making it all up, that there actually is a separation between what happened and what we made it mean, then we can make it mean empowering things.
Mm-hmm.
Someone died. Oh my God, they're no longer in pain. And look at the lessons I learned by going through that period with them.
Mm-hmm.
Or I lost my job. Okay, great. Then I have the opportunity to do anything I want in the world now. And I got so much by working there for the last 6 years.
And even, oh my gosh, I don't know how to fix it, to I don't have to fix it.
I don't.
I don't.
Right.
And
If it
once
keeps
we take
fixing,
responsibility for ourselves, it gives us the ability to be able to say, well, that's not my job. I mean, that's not for me. I'm not responsible for that because I know what I am responsible for. If I don't
absolutely.
have those boundaries that tell me what I'm responsible for, then counterintuitively, I start feeling responsible for everything, which is no way to go through life.
It's not. And that was one of the largest lessons I had to learn from me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would see anything wrong or not working in the world, and I would take the responsibility to make that change. So, wars in the Middle East,
Mm-hmm.
people dying in mass shooting events, those things used to be my responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And instead I know I created that my purpose for being here is to advance the energetic vibration of every human on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I won't succeed, I promise.
Right.
I did the math. I think I have to spend something like a tenth of a second with every human, and in
Yeah.
that period of time, I probably can't make the
Yeah.
difference. So I'm not going to succeed.
Right.
But if I get even 12% of any population, there's the tipping point, and the
Right.
population will take care of itself.
Right. Yeah.
So I just look at, okay, here's a collection of humans. What's the number that's 12%? Okay, that's my goal for that collection.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
When a Buddhist takes their vows to become a monk,
Hmm.
one of the vows that they make is that they vow to end suffering among all sentient beings.
Right.
And of course, it's impossible for them to achieve and succeed at that vow. But the mere fact that you're taking that vow gives you a path and a direction and a sense. And as long as you're working towards it, I think, as Mother Teresa said, we can't cure the whole world, but we can fix our little corner of it.
And she's right. And sometimes if we impact the people who impact the people, our corner gets bigger and
Right.
bigger. And bigger.
Right. Yeah. Somebody
Yeah.
once asked me if I wanted to work with if I wanted to build a community, if I wanted to work in building community. And I said, no, I'd rather work with community builders.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Then you
was
can have
one.
an impact, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you wrote a book. Tell us about the book.
The title of the book is Practical Happiness, the Art of the Technology of Creating Joy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not substantial. It's literally on paper and or electronic figures. The technology I use with my clients for, quite frankly, creating anything they want. Everybody comes to me with something,
Mm-hmm.
like we were talking about, the house, the car, the relationship. And when you cook it down after a few months of working with me, they come to realize, oh, that's the thing that is my happiness.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided, okay, fine, we'll just cut to the chase and give them the technology to get to happiness. It talks about a lot of the things that we've discussed here, but it's literally just the path I take anyone down to get to their happiness, and largely eliminate all the other things that get in the way of it.
Gotcha. Yeah, folks, we're touching on a lot of subjects here and a lot of topics that are really quite profound and quite deep, and they really go to the very nature of what it means to be a human being. And Dale has written a book, Practical Happiness, that goes into all of these topics in much greater depth and gives you a real pathway and some tips and tricks and traps for being able to move forward in embodying and manifesting, these ideas, in your own life. So I urge you to, check it out. Dale, tell us where they can find the book.
The most centralized place would be to go to my website, which is dalekershner.com.
Okay, and that'll be in the show notes.
Okay. And so you just go there. There's a tab that's all about the book. You can order it directly from there and they'll ship it to you.
Okay, Dale, thanks so much for coming on. And again, folks, we have touched the surface of some topics that each one of them could be an entire podcast.
Yeah.
But it gives you a little idea of the potential of what it means to be a human being. I would always add to that we're not our thoughts. We're the creator of our thoughts. And as long as we live within our thoughts, we're limited by them. When we understand that we can create them, we become unlimited. And I think, Dale, that adds to your message.
Totally. Totally.
Thanks again for coming. Be well and be happy.
Thank you, Bob. I'm so honored to have had the opportunity.